Hi everyone, my name is Rachel and I am an instructor for Girls Code It. Today I will be going over the Python data types lesson, and if at any point throughout this presentation, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask either me or any of the other instructors, and we will try to get back to you as soon as we can. And if you guys missed last week's lesson, we just went over an introduction to Python, and you can find that on our website at girlscoded.org. So if you go under past events, you can find our Python Class 1 Intro to Python video. And this will just help you guys, help get you guys up to speed for today's lesson. And please log on to Replit so that you guys can code along with me throughout the lesson. So for today's agenda, we will be giving a basic overview on data types and variables. We will also be going over operators, casting, and finally we will have a really fun Hunger Games workshop / demonstration. So what are data types? Data types represent values that tell what operations can be performed on a particular piece of data. So some examples are numeric data types, which are like ints, floats, complex numbers. We also have strings, lists, tuples, sets, and dictionaries. And data types have their own built-in methods / functions, so you can do different actions with them. And you can use the type function to actually get the data type that you were using. And I will show that in one of our examples. So what is a variable? A variable is a way to store or capture information. All right, so just to give clarification, this first line is basically Python script. So you guys don't really need to know how to use this for right now, but it is a good habit to get into because if you do have multiple files in your Python program, this is definitely useful so that you can specify that to run this block of code only if the name of your program is main, which it is. You can see here main.py, and so it will run this code. But you guys do not have to include this Python script. So yeah, the program will work exactly the same whether you put this line of code in or not. Okay, so back to variables. A equals 2, this assigns the value 2 to the variable a, and then if we were to print that out, you can see that it prints out 2, and you use the type function here to figure out what data type 2 is, and then it prints out class int, because this is an integer. And then for the variable b, we really quickly went over the input function in last week's lesson, but basically what this does is whatever the user inputs here, this value here will be stored inside the variable b, and when you print b, it will show 2, and then when you print the type b, it will always print out class string. So no matter what the user inputs here, it will always come out as a string. And that's just how the input function works. And if you want to change it to an int, we would cast that, and I will be going over that shortly. All right, so Python is also a dynamically typed language, and what this means is that you do not have to actually declare the variable. So if you guys have ever coded in Java, which is a static language, you will know that you have to declare the variable with its data type. So say you would have to do something like int, and then variable equals a value, or string variable equals this string. But in this piece of code, you can see that we did not actually declare the variable x, and it runs as expected. We did not have to declare the variable x. And basically this is a function. We will be going over functions later in our course. So basically it takes this value here within the parentheses and stores it within x, prints 100, and same thing here. It stores this in x, prints x, and it prints hello there. Okay, moving on. So here are just, this is a numeric data type, integers. What integers are, they are positive or negative whole numbers represented by the int class. So some examples are 3, 500, 200, 13. There, you can do this really long number, this really small number. There is no minimum or maximum number that can be stored within the int. So you could do this whole long number and it will print as expected. I will demonstrate this for you guys. All right, so basically what these 3 single quotes do, it comments out multiple lines of your code, whereas this hashtag only comments out 1 line of code. That's just a tip you guys can use. And yeah, so this code shows when you use the type function, it prints out class int. Even though this is a really huge number, this demonstrates there is no maximum or minimum number that can be stored in int. Now for floats, this is also a numeric data type. The floats are real numbers with a floating point representation, so basically it is just a decimal number, and it is represented by the float class. And it truncates at a point, which I'll demonstrate in a second. So here are some examples, 32.0, 16.345, and I will demonstrate this. All right, so our first variable x, we stored 15.20 inside x, but when it prints out as 15.2, and this is because the value was truncated so that it does not include 0, and this is to speed up the efficiency of your code, because if Python were to print out all the zeros of this decimal number, it could go on for infinity, and that would not be a really great language. It would run really slowly. Now for y. What this is scientific notation. So how it will print is in scientific notation form, 3.23 e plus 19. So this is 3.23 times 10 to the power of 19, which is scientific notation. And this happens the same way. You can do it either way. You don't have to use the plus sign, or you can use the plus sign. Either way works. And you can see that all 3 will print as class float. Okay, moving on to complex numbers. This is also numeric data type. How this is formatted is real number plus imaginary number times j. So this concept won't really be used unless you are doing something like advanced calculus or some advanced physics formulas. So we will not be using this in our course. But this is just good to know that this is a data type that exists, and it is represented by the complex class. So here are some examples of complex numbers. I will just show you how this prints out, but you guys do not have to worry too much about how to calculate it or anything. Yeah, this is how it will print out. Okay, now for string data types. A string is basically a collection of 1 or more characters within quotes, and there is no actual character data type. So basically what a character is a string that is of length 1. So say a, or like an exclamation mark, or even like a dollar symbol. Those are all characters, but they don't have a character data type. They are represented by the string class. And then I will just show you guys some examples of some strings here. Okay, again, this is Python script that you don't have to worry about for right now. This is a string counter that we will be looking at later, so don't worry about that just yet. Okay, so let's just run the code so I can show you guys what this does. All right, so for variable a, we assign it with, this is a string with double quotes around it. It will print into the interpreter like this. If you were to use single quotes, it would also print out the same way. If you use 3 double quotes like this allows you to print a multiple line string, and however you format it within the editor, here, however you were to format it, it will print in the same way inside the interpreter. Yeah, so all the white space will all be shown in the interpreter. Okay. For variable d, this here, this group of code just represents some special characters that you will need to use an escape sequence in order to print within a string. And this includes quote, double quotes, single quotes, and even the backslash. And the reason why we need this escape sequence is because if we were to delete the backslash, what this would do is that it would take this as the string, and this would just be some unknown code that is not within the string. But if you wanted to actually print a double quotation mark inside the string, what you would need to do is use the escape sequence and use a backslash. This is how it would print. You would use a backslash for another backslash. It'll print like that. And the escape sequence also includes this new line character. And what a new line character does is it's essentially like an enter key, but within your string. So it will give you a new line. As you can see here, it enters. And here is a new line at character. Okay, now for G, here. This is an unformatted string. So how your string will print depends on your white space. It will include your white space as shown here. Here's the white space. It also did a new line here. If you want to use the strip function, is this shown here? Yes, the strip function will remove all white space. So basically, here we see the strip function. It will remove the new line. This is considered white space. It will remove this white space right here. That is considered white space, and it will remove this white space here with the new line. But what it doesn't do is it does not remove this new line here, because the strip function only removes the white space from either end of your string. So remove these parts of the white space, as you can see here. For the strip function specified with a character, this specifically deletes the new line characters at either end of your string. So this is shown here. So it only removed the new line character here, and it removed the, it did not remove any of the, it did not remove this new line here because there is white space here, so it is not technically at the end of this string, but it will also keep this white space here because it only gets rid of the new line character. And it will also, even though you are specifying you want to delete the new lines, it only gets rid of it at either end of the string, so it will not get rid of this new line or this new line. And you can see that printed here. Now for the find function. This basically, you specify the substring that you want to locate within the whole string here, and then it basically locates it based on the index of the string. So here I can show you guys what the index would be. So this would be index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So at index 16 is where the string shows up, and you can see here printed 16. And for H, this uses the format function specified with the variable string count. So throughout the program, we were counting the number of strings. And then, so what you would do is you place 2 curly brackets for where you want to input the number in to your string. And you have to use the format function because you cannot concatenate a string with an int because they are 2 different data types. So you can't concatenate them together. So this is how you would print it out, so that it would include the variable for string count within your string. So we'll say there are 8 strings in this example. All right. So now we will move on to the split function, and what this does, it specifies where you want to split this entire string into 2 separate substrings. So it will delete this colon here, and then it will separate these into 2 substrings, as shown here. You can see 1 substring, and I'm not sure if you can see that, but it does separate that into a second substring. And finally, we have the print function for indexing. This just shows that you can index a string. So basically, at index 3, it will print out whatever is at index 3. So for this string, index 3 will be I, and it will print out I here. And just wanted to highlight this. Indexing for Python always starts at 0, so always remember that. Indexing always starts at 0. So the S here will be 0, P will be 1, L will be 2, I will be 3. Okay. Now for the tuple data type. A tuple is a collection of objects which is ordered and immutable, which means that it cannot be changed. So these values in here cannot be changed. And here's an example of that. Okay, so if we run this code, we can see that tuple 1 at index 0 will print out physics, because for this tuple, physics is at index 0. And then for tuple 2, this just is asking what will print out if you include 2 indexes, 1 and 5. So the first index is inclusive, the second index is exclusive. So this will print out the values within index 1 and 5. So from here, index 1 will be 2, index 5 will be 6. But since the second index is exclusive, it will not print out 6, but it will print out 2, 3, 4, and 5, as shown here. Okay, so now for lists, this is an ordered collection of elements, and this lists are immutable, so they can be changed, unlike tuples. And I will show you an example of this. And again, we will be going over all of these lists, tuples, sets, most of the stuff covered in today's lesson. We will be going over this again in future lessons. So you don't have to worry too much if you aren't able to completely grasp the concepts. But if you do have questions, again, please feel free to reach out, ask us any questions through our emails. Yeah. Okay, so if we print this, you can see printing list 1, it will show up in the same way as you declared list 1 as. For list 2, we are using a for loop, which we will also be having a future lesson on, for loop. But basically, for each of these values, for each fruit in this list, we will print the fruit like so: apple, banana, and orange in order. And for these last 2 lines of code, this shows that you can have different data types within a list. So you can have an int and a string within a list, and that is a totally valid list for Python. And yeah, if you were to print this, list 3 at index 2, this would print out 2 here, and then list 3 at index 1 here. It would print out chicken nuggets, and it would say, I want 2 chicken nuggets. And this would only work because we used commas, but if you were to actually concatenate the, if you actually try to concatenate the data types together, this would an int as 2, well, this would be a string and this would be a string. So again, you cannot combine a string and an int together, and you would actually have to cast this, which I will be going over a little bit later. Okay, so moving on to sets, these are an unordered and unindexed collection of items, and you cannot access any of the elements in the set by indexing because the elements always print in a random order, and these are denoted by curly brackets. Oh, and sorry, I forgot to mention, lists are denoted by regular brackets, and tuples are denoted by parentheses. And I will just show you how sets will print in the interpreter. It will print, you would expect it to print chicken pot pie, but since sets always print in random order, it will say this just happened to print in the right order. If you were to run it again, it would be in a totally different order. If you run it again, it will be in a different order. And that just shows the sets are always random. Okay, now for dictionaries. Dictionaries are a collection of key and value pairs. You can't have any duplicate keys, but you can have duplicate values. So in this example here, A would be the key and 12 would be the value. 12.3 would be the key and hello would be the value. And remember, keys are case sensitive, so make sure your capitalization is correct when you call the keys. And dictionaries are ordered, indexed, and mutable. So I will show you guys how this would look in the interpreter. All right, so we wanted to find dictionary with the key as 1, and it will print out the value, hello. And then for this same dictionary at key 3, this will also print out the value, hello. And for the dictionary at key 2, it will print out the corresponding value, bye. All right. Now for operators, we will be going over action versus assignment. Okay, so if we run this here, these two lines are assignments. We are just assigning the value 1 to the variable A, and here we're assigning the value 2 to the variable B. So we're not actually doing anything to each of these values, we're just assigning them to the variable. Now for this line of code, this is an action. We're adding 10 to the variable A, but if we were to print this out, A would still be 1, shown here. And this is because we did not actually assign A any value, we just did the action of adding. So A is not any new value at all. It will still be 1. Okay, for this line of code, this is both an action and an assignment using the plus equals operator. So basically what this operator does is this is the equivalent of it, but this is just basically a shortcut of this format. So it is taking the value B, the value from B2, and adding it to 10, and then it declares the total sum of B plus 10 to B itself. So if we were to delete that, to run it again, it will show 12. So yeah, that is basically the difference between an assignment and an action, and how you can combine both to actually assign the whatever action you wanted to do to the variable and print that out into the interpreter. Now we will go over operators themselves. Operators in Python are very flexible. Here we just declared two ints to the variables, int a and int b, and if we were to run this, it would print out whatever value is stored in int a, which is 5, and the value stored in int b, which is 12. We would add them together. So 5 plus 12 would be 17. 5 minus 12, negative 7. 5 times 12, 60. Yeah, these are all operators. If we wanted to do an exponent, we could do the value stored in int b with you would have two asterisks or two multiplication symbols with the power you wanted to multiply by. So this raises int b, which is 12, to the power of 2, which gives you 144. You can also divide int a by int b, giving you this complex number here. So here is the modulo operator, and this is division, int b divided by int a, and it gives you the remainder of that. So it would be 12 divided by 5, which would equal remainder 2. So the remainder 2 would be printed here. Booleans are another data type. They return either true or false. What this line does is it checks whether Boolean A or Boolean B will return true. So if either Boolean A or Boolean B is equal to true, then it will also print out true, which it does because Boolean A is equal to true. Now for this line, this is checking if Boolean A and Boolean B are equal to true, if they will both return true. But since Boolean B is false, one of the conditions is not met. And since there is the AND operator here, both conditions both Booleans have to meet the condition of true. And since that is not true, the print statement will actually print false. Now for strings, if you were to add two strings together using the addition operator, this would just append string B to string A. So it would say hello world like this. And for lists, if you were to use the addition operator here, it would just also append the list from list B to list A. So what this would print out is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shown here. And if you were to append list C to list A, it would go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 as shown here. And what I just went over only covers some of the basic operators, and there are many more out there. Okay, casting. What is casting? Casting is basically when you convert one data type to a different data type, almost like this magician here. And you would use the int or string functions to cast them into a different data type. And I'll just demonstrate this. Okay, so if you were to run this code, you would come out with an error. If you were to put an int, this would, no matter what, this would print out as class string. And I'll just show you guys this because, as I mentioned earlier, no matter what you input into the input function, it will always come out as class string. You can see it came out as class string, and because we wanted to add an int with a string, this does not work. You can't add two different data types together because that doesn't work out. So how you would fix this is you would have to cast B here into an int. So it was originally a string, but using the int function, you casted it into an int, and you can add the two values together. So it would be adding 10 here, plus what you inputted here, 2, which was casted into an int. So 10 plus 2 would equal to the int 12. So another way you could cast the int would be to use the int function and just put it all around the input function here. And that will also cast your string into an int, and they will add it together. But say you don't want to actually add them together, traditionally, mathematically, you want to, say, append the string 2 to a string 10. So you could do this by casting A as a string, and then if you run it, you will append 2 to 10, and then it will come out as 102. So you were appending it and you did not mathematically add it. And that is the basics on casting. And finally, we have our demo. And we will just be going over a Hunger Games character creator. Alright, so here we are in our main file for our demonstration. So what this line does is it imports the text file. It imports this Python file. Sorry, not the text file. It imports the Python file so that you can run it in this main Python file. And don't worry too much about importing. We will be going over that in future lessons. Again, the Python script, we will also be going over that in a future lesson. And basically what this line does is it calls a function, and it stores it into this variable out, and then it will print it out. And where this function is located is in the character class Python file. So when the function is called here, it is calling it from this character class file, and it will call upon this code here. Okay, with the file, which is the character text file, and here we just have some descriptions on each of the characters from Hunger Games. Okay, so here you don't have to worry about this for right now. Sorry, that was my mistake. You don't have to worry about this section here right now. What this does is it opens the file here, character text, chara.txt. It will open this file, and then here is a for loop. Again, don't worry about for loops. We will be going over that in future lesson. So for each line in this file, for each line, we will be executing this code for each of the lines in this character text file. Okay, so after that, we use the strip function and store the stripped lines into the variable x. And so that will just strip any white space. So it will strip this white space here. We will get rid of that white space. Any white space on this side, we'll get rid of 2. And again, it stores an x. And then in this conditional here, if character in x, this checks if the substring character is found in this line. Then we will carry out this code here. And then we are using the split function to split this line of code into 2 substrings with the colon and the space. It was specified here. We specified the colon and the space, so we will get rid of the colon and the space, separate it into 2 substrings. So one substring will be character, and the second substring will be Katniss Everdeen. And then we also specified it at index 1. We want to assign the split function with index 1 into the variable name. So this will be printed out as a list. So it will be character as one substring with a comma, and then Katniss Everdeen as the second substring. And so this will be index 0, this will be index 1. So what we will actually be printing out is Katniss Everdeen that will be stored inside of name. And then we basically just store this inside the output. We'll return the output later. And then we do the same thing with district and weapon. So district and weapon, it just keeps checking for each of these lines of code. So basically how this will print out, if we run the code, you'll see Katniss Everdeen, and then 12, bow and arrow, Finnick Dare, 4, trident. And just keeps going throughout the character text file. And that's basically how you can sort through a text file using the specific string functions. So you strip and split, and that is just how you can apply it to a file like this. All right. So here are just some additional resources that are really useful. If you click on this link here, you'll see a bunch of documentation on data types in Python, and this is really useful. You can read through it if you have extra time. And another really important resource is W3 Schools. And W3 Schools basically has a bunch of documentation on a bunch of different languages. So this is definitely somewhere you can do a lot of additional reading on learning Python, some other Python documentation. There's a lot of documentation on Python data types that you guys can go through. Yeah, this is a really widely used resource in the programming world, so I would really recommend W3 Schools. And that concludes the lesson for today. Thanks everyone for watching. Our next lesson will be next Saturday, September 19th at either 9 a.m. or 3 p.m. PST, depending on when your lesson is scheduled. We will be going over conditionals next lesson. And if you do need any help or want one-on-one tutoring, please don't be afraid to reach out. Here are some emails you can reach out to, or you can go to this link here. And if you click the book button, you can just fill this out, get some one-on-one tutoring for any help that you might need. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and